Well, we turn now to an issue that's been puzzling governments, investors, and ordinary people alike. The potential benefits of artificial intelligence weighed against the risks. Our next guest, Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, believes that the list of benefits is long. He joined Walter Isaacson to talk about the new book he co-authored, Super Agency.
Thank you, Bianna and Reid Hoffman. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
Man, you've been in the forefront of everything in the digital revolution, from LinkedIn to PayPal, and now, of course, artificial intelligence. You've got a new book called Super Agency. It's very optimistic about AI. But let me start with the title and with the word agency. Let's leave aside super agency for a minute, just agency. When we humans use it, it means we have a free will to make a plan and take an action. Is that what you mean here? And can computers do that?
Well, I'm not saying that computers can do that. This is actually a book about human agency, both individual and societal, hence the kind of super agency and superpowers. But by the way, the philosophers might dispute different definitions of whether or not it's agency and free will, but it is agency as expressions of our fundamental kind of humanity and how we organize our lives and connect with each other. And the thesis around super agency is that AI, like other general purpose technologies in our history, will help us do that.
Right. And what you talk about in the book is the notion that working with the symbiosis between the machines and ourselves will empower us more. Explain why you think we get empowered more when our machines are doing more and more things.
Well, I mean, for example, take cars as a history, which, by the way, they did have a similar discussion about whether or not to destroy human society, change patterns of human interaction, et cetera. And cars actually give you agency. They give you superpowers, the ability to go faster, further distances, et cetera. And by the way, you get super agency with cars, because not only do you get that superpower, but other people do too. A doctor might be able to come visit you versus you having to try to get to the doctor. And computers, I think, and AI will do the same thing.
When you say that it'll be safe and will respond to our needs, let me quote a sentence where you say, we're going to pursue a future in which billions of people around the world get equitable hands-on access to experiment with these technologies. First of all, let me ask you, why is that important?
Well, it's important in part because part of how we get, just think about, for example, Tim Cook's iPhone is the same one that the cab driver and the Uber driver is using. And so it's the fact when you get technologies designed for hundreds of millions of people, billions of people, and they're engaged with them, then we're all being elevated and our society itself is getting super agency together. And so that inclusion helps us direct it in ways that are better, not just for individuals, but also for society.
You talk about a cognitive industrial revolution. And I love looking at history of all the various agricultural and industrial revolutions compared to this one to the previous revolutions we've had driven by technology.
Well, part of the reason I call it a cognitive industrial revolution is I want both the kind of the upside to be well understood, which is nothing of our society, the way we exist, middle class, education, medicine, this very technology that you and I are talking on today exists without the Industrial Revolution. So the outcome, the targeted outcome can be amazing and should be amazing. But it's also, we have to navigate the transitions, because the transitions, like the transition into the Industrial Revolution, necessitated a lot of kind of difficult adjustments within human society. We needed child labor laws, we needed, work weeks, we needed a whole bunch of other things in order to make that work. And I anticipate we're going to have similar transition issues. And so we need to navigate those, hopefully, having learned, with more humanity and more grace than earlier transitions.
Well, tell me about some of the transition rules that you think are necessary for AI.
Well, so it is the fact that, like, people say, oh, it's going to be a whole bunch of job replacement. And there will be some job replacement. Take, for example, customer service, where a human is basically trying to be a robot, following a script. AI will do that much better. But even a lot of other jobs will be transformed. So when you previously needed these like 20 skills, you now need only, call it, 8 of those skills and then 5 more in order to do the job. Like if you're a graphic designer, your ability to do things fine-tuned with your graphic dexterity, manual dexterity is very important. Now, visual thinking is still important, but the manual dexterity may be less important. And that's kind of a job transition. So we need AIs. The thing I would be asking for from the companies, from government, is AIs that help people with these transitions. Which few skills they need to pick up. Is they're going to still be doing this job, which will be a human with an AI replacing a human, being the same human doing that, or helping you find other jobs, helping you learn other jobs, helping you do other jobs. And we want AIs helping us with all that.
When you talk about it, the role seems even grander than just helping us with our jobs, because I'm going to read you a sentence from the book. You say, every new technology we've invented, from languages to books, you talked about the printing press, to the mobile phone, has defined, redefined, deepened, and expanded what it means to be human. So tell me how this will expand what it means to be human.
Well, so part of it is we are actually more Homo techne than Homo sapiens. We evolve through our technology. Our genetics are very much basically the same over the last 4,000 years, which is kind of the recorded history of human civilization. And yet the way that I can see literally through glasses, etc. AI is going to be doing the same thing. It's going to be saying, hey, you want to learn something, you want to know something, you want to navigate the world. We call AI an informational GPS. And so just like you use GPS to navigate like a new city that you're going to, all information spaces, medical, work, education, creative, can be amplified with this information GPS. And that's the kind of, that then becomes a new part of what it is to be human, because we have that in helping us with our navigation, just as our smartphones and a map does today.
One of the things you talk about as part of your subtitle is we should talk about what could go right. I know you talk about medicine, you've been involved with cancer research. Tell me the big things that can go right with this.
Well, so, as you were gesturing at, Manas, a company that I co-founded with Siddhartha Mukherjee, we're trying to cure cancer with AI accelerations and drug discovery. But even more immediate, like line of sight, not building new things, is a medical assistant 24/7 that can be in every pocket. You have a concern about yourself, your child, your sibling, your parent. You can get an answer. A tutor on every subject for every age, a legal assistant. You're like, well, I can't afford a lawyer and I'm trying to figure out this rental contract. Well, actually, in fact, AIs, ChatGPT, Copilot, etc., can help you with that today. And so those are all ways that your life gets kind of magnified. And of course, it'll end up being even more things than these things that we can see today. Part of new general purpose technologies is that they create new things that we didn't even imagine was possible. And that's part of course, the excitement of, being an inventor and an investor in these things.
Give me an example of something we probably aren't imagining that you think might happen.
Well, okay, this might be a little wonkish for our audience, but like, for example, one of the reasons why that all of these frontier labs are building coding assistants is not just to make engineers more efficient. Yes, that is. But like now you're going to have co-pilots that can be a software engineer for all of us. So for example, if I said, hey, I want to create a new kind of game that I can play with my friends, and I have this idea of something that I could possibly do, I will then go create that game, and I can have my AI software engineer help create it for me. And that's just like one example of lots. It could be doing research. It could be, figuring out how I want to have a home app to coordinate with my family. All of those things we are now all going to have a software agent co-pilot within a relatively small number of years.
You talk about super agency, and you say that in this book that AI will enhance human agency. But so much of what's happened with social media recently and with digital revolution in general seems to have reduced our agency in some ways. It's made it harder for us to be in control of our lives. Explain that and what can be done.
Part of what we're trying to advocate for in the book and kind of how technologists build things, what are the things we should want or things that increase our agency. Part of it is that to say, well, imagine you had an agent that was on your side and you're reading something and was for you and was essentially enabling you. And you read something and you say, I'm not sure that's quite right. And then the agent can say, well, here are three things that you might consider as interesting sources to figure this out. Or hey, you're believing this thing that you're reading or you're seeing. here's some cross things that check. Like, for example, one of the things that we're already seeing with AI is like cyber criminal phishing. So you can get a phone call that's trying to persuade you that it's your brother, sister, child, partner, etc., and start saying, "Hey, send money to here." Well, you also will have an agent that says, "Oh, hey, this sounds like this could be something that's not good for you. Why don't you ask something about what only the two of you know in order to make sure and can be part of the protection?" And this is what we're essentially building to as we go through these transitions to the other side.
And how will AI then help us with disinformation in general? The type of disinformation that's gotten very controversial now, but seems to be undermining our democracy.
Well, as you know, this is a deeply political topic. I mean, what counts as misinformation? What counts as disinformation? There's a lot of different views on, and coming to a coherent set of views on that as kind of the bulk of America is actually very difficult. Now, that being said, I think there's a lot of ways that these agents can actually, in fact, kind of be on our side, helping like fact check and do other kinds of things. And so take, for example, you're reading some information on some media site or social media site that says, vaccines are known to be very dangerous and they like plant chips in you and they cause autism. And I say, well, actually, in fact, here's what a bunch of different scientific studies show. Here's what some of the people who challenge them say. And here's how you can inform yourself in a good way. And I think that's the kind of thing that we want these agents to be helping us with. And, part of it is if you have an agent that's kind of saying, "Hey, look out for me when I'm doing this." And I go, "Hey, I've seen this agent look out for me in various ways, like look out for me in terms of my health, look out for me in terms of making like financial decisions or reading my rental lease." Then it's like, oh, and then I trust it in telling me these things too. And that's part of my hope is that we get through as we work our way through the transition, that we actually have a more of a common based knowledge approach that we can then be finding more things of, here's how we can get to agreement and realize what this information possibly is.
Let me ask you about regulation. I just came back from Europe, and in Paris, they had the AI summit. And the previous AI summits, it had all been, how are we going to regulate this? Now, in Europe, they're totally panicked that Mistral, one of their AI companies that does Le Chat, which competes with ChatGPT, is going to be hindered because there'll be too much regulation. If there's a whole lot of competition and a whole lot of companies and a whole lot of countries from China to France to the U.S. doing it, how can we regulate it?
Well, I think that first off, we should try to keep the initial regulation very focused. It's like, how do we make sure that, criminals, terrorists, rogue states aren't doing things? How do we make sure that we don't make some critical large error, right, in terms of how this stuff works? Not how do we cover every single thing? Not how do we have it not, do something that might be like hallucination or a misstatement of some kind of fact or other kinds of things. Look, we can adjust those as we iterate and develop. And part of what I think is really good, I think the diversity of multiple things, I actually personally think that actually having the French, the British, the Germans, the Italians actually in this and helping shape that, I think helps it be for more humanity generally. It's any one culture only has its own lens. And as much as, of course, Walter, you and I love kind of a lot of the deep American values in American culture, part of the reason is because we learn from others, right, as well. It's one of the things that I think is our aspirational American values. And I think that's a good thing. And so I think regulation is possible. It should be done specifically, slowly, learning as we're doing.
You've been a supporter of Democrats. I think you supported Kamala Harris, but so many of the tech bro friends you have from Silicon Valley have now been flocking to Washington, Elon Musk being very involved with the administration, but so many others. What caused this shift in the Silicon Valley mentality? And do you worry when you see an inauguration that has all tech bros sitting in front of the cabinet?
Well, I think there's two things. So one is, if I said any government, including the American, is deeply talking to the technology industry about how the future is, I would say that's good. And that includes our current administration and so on. Now, I think one of the reasons why a lot of technologists said, hey, we're going to work with the current administration is not just, of course, because it was, completely fairly and democratically elected, but also It's the, hey, you also believe that the technology industry is important, about how we create the future jobs, the future industry, the future services that help us and become part of what we can export to the world. And that really matters. And if you have one party arguing that that's good and one party arguing that that's bad, the industry, the tech industry will lean in some percentage to the party that argues that that's good.
You were also involved in the lawsuit against Trump. I think you helped fund E. Jean Carroll. And he's become very vindictive against even the law firms that have been involved. Do you worry about that revenge and vindictiveness, the bulliness that we sometimes see coming out of Washington?
Well, of course I do. I think it's only human and natural to do so. I mean, like, when he removed Mark Milley's protection detail, a general who has put his whole life in service of the U.S. and engaged in conflict around the world, and who is a target of essentially our, like the opponents of America, like Iran, if he's willing to do that, what else is he willing to do? That's of course very deeply concerning.
I'm going to read you a sentence that really struck me in your book, which is, by maintaining our development lead, we're infusing AI technologies with democratic values and integrating these technologies across society in ways that bolster our economic power, our national security, and our ability to broadly project our global influence. Explain why you think it's important for the U.S. to maintain the lead while also infusing it with our values.
So technology shaped the world. And part of the reason why the kind of Europeans had global impact for centuries was they were the first developers and broad adopters of the Industrial Revolution. This is the cognitive Industrial Revolution. The same kind of thing is going to shape, like, what are the societies and industries that have power, and what are the things that kind of affect, in terms of the shape of technology, how we navigate the world, this kind of informational GPS. And so a system that says, hey, it's really important that individuals have autonomy, have agency, that we make decisions as a collective group together within kind of democratic processes, is, I think, like some of the great things that America and other countries have brought to the world. And I think that's important that we continue to elaborate them. And the way we do that is by being on the forefront of this technology. And so, sometimes when I'm really trying to push this point home within a, kind of an American context, is we want AI to be American intelligence.
Reid Hoffman, thank you so much for joining us.
Walter, always a pleasure.